It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed, though Daniel didn't know it yet. He was sitting at his desk, going through emails like any other day. The office was buzzing with the usual noise. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people talking about their weekend plans. Just another normal day at the consulting firm where he'd worked for the past 6 years. Then she walked in. Daniel noticed her because of how quiet she was. In an office where everyone made noise, where people announced themselves with loud hellos and coffee cups banging on desks, she just appeared. One moment the conference room doorway was empty. The next moment she was standing there. Dark coat, simple clothing, a leather bag over her shoulder. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed for attention. But everyone noticed her anyway. Their manager, Robert, introduced her during the morning meeting. "Everyone, this is Natasha. She'll be joining us as a consultant for the next few months. She specializes in crisis management and organizational efficiency. Please make her feel welcome." Natasha smiled at the room. It was a pleasant smile, the kind that should have put everyone at ease. But something about it made Daniel shift in his seat. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way her eyes didn't quite match the smile. Or maybe it was how she seemed to be looking at each person, really looking like she was reading something invisible written on their foreheads. "Thank you for having me," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled. "I'm looking forward to working with all of you." The meeting continued. Robert talked about quarterly targets and upcoming projects. Daniel tried to focus, but he kept glancing at Natasha. She sat at the far end of the table, a notebook open in front of her. But she wasn't writing anything. She was just watching, listening. Her pen rested between her fingers, but it never touched the paper. After the meeting, people gathered around the coffee machine like they always did. It was where the real conversations happened, where people complained about workload and shared office gossip. Daniel poured himself a cup and noticed Natasha standing a few feet away, looking at the bulletin board covered with company announcements and employee photos. "First day can be overwhelming," Daniel said, trying to be friendly. "Let me know if you need anything." Natasha turned to him with that same smile. "That's kind of you. I'm sure I'll find my way around." "What kind of crisis management do you do?" Daniel asked, making conversation. "The kind where you fix problems before they become disasters," she replied. "Prevention is always better than cure, don't you think?" Before Daniel could respond, she added, "You must be Daniel. 6 years with the company, right? You work on the financial analysis team." Daniel nodded, slightly surprised. "Yeah, that's right. Did Robert tell you about the team structure?" "Something like that," she said, her smile widening just a fraction. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel standing there with his coffee, wondering why that brief conversation felt strange. The first week passed quietly. Natasha attended meetings, reviewed documents, and spoke when spoken to. She was professional, polite, and somehow always present without being noticed. Daniel would look up from his work and realize she'd been sitting at a desk across the room for the past hour, and he hadn't even heard her arrive. It was Friday afternoon when things started feeling really off. Daniel was in the break room heating up his lunch when Natasha walked in. She started making tea, moving with the kind of deliberate calm that some people have, like every action is planned. "How's your sister doing?" she asked suddenly, not looking at him. Daniel froze. "What? Your sister? I hope she's feeling better." His mind raced. His sister had been in the hospital earlier that week for a minor surgery. Nothing serious, but still. He hadn't told anyone at work. He'd taken half a day off, said it was a personal matter, and that was it. He definitely hadn't mentioned his sister to Natasha. "How do you know about that?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Natasha looked at him then, her expression completely neutral. "Did I get that wrong? I thought I overheard someone mention it. Maybe I'm mistaken." "No one here knew about it," Daniel said carefully. "Oh." She tilted her head slightly. "Well, I hope whoever was unwell is doing better now." She picked up her tea and left the break room, leaving Daniel staring after her. That evening, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe she had overheard something. Maybe he'd mentioned it to someone and forgotten. But the more he thought about it, the more certain he became. He hadn't told anyone. He'd been careful about that because his sister didn't like people making a fuss. Over the weekend, Daniel tried to shake off the weird feeling. He told himself he was being paranoid. But Monday morning brought something else. There was a company-wide email about a security audit. Nothing unusual about that. Companies did them all the time. But the timing was odd, and when Daniel saw Natasha in the hallway, she had this knowing look on her face. "Good thing they're checking the systems," she said as she passed him. "You never know what vulnerabilities might be hiding." 2 days later, the IT department announced they'd found and blocked an attempted security breach. Someone had tried to hack into the company's client database over the weekend. If the audit hadn't happened when it did, they might have succeeded. At the emergency meeting, the CEO thanked Natasha personally. "Your recommendation to run that security audit came at exactly the right time. You might have saved us from a serious problem." Daniel watched Natasha accept the praise with gracious modesty. "Just doing my job," she said. "I had a feeling it was worth checking." A feeling. Right. Daniel started paying closer attention. He noticed small things. How Natasha always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. How she knew things she shouldn't know. How people opened up to her, shared information, trusted her almost immediately. She'd become friends with Helen, the office manager, within days. Helen, who usually kept to herself and guarded the administrative files like they were state secrets, was now having coffee with Natasha every morning. Daniel saw them laughing together, saw Helen showing Natasha something on her computer screen. He watched as Natasha smoothly integrated herself into different departments. She had lunch with the legal team. She joined the marketing people for after-work drinks. She seemed to know everyone's schedule, everyone's habits, everyone's weak spots, and always that smile. It was the smile that bothered Daniel most. It was perfect. Too perfect. Like something practiced in a mirror until it looked natural but wasn't. The smile of someone who knew exactly what effect they were having and calculated every expression. 3 weeks after Natasha arrived, Daniel found himself working late. The office was mostly empty, just a few dedicated people finishing up projects. He was reviewing financial reports when he heard footsteps. Natasha appeared in his doorway. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked. "Just catching up," Daniel replied. She walked into his cubicle area, uninvited, and looked at the photos on his desk. One of them showed Daniel at his college graduation standing next to his favorite professor, Dr. Morrison. "Dr. Morrison," Natasha said, picking up the photo. "Great teacher. Tough grader, but fair." Daniel's blood went cold. "You know Dr. Morrison?" "Know of him," Natasha corrected, setting the photo down. "I've heard good things about his economics program." "I never mentioned where I went to college." Natasha's smile never wavered. "Didn't you? I must have seen it on your LinkedIn profile." Daniel hadn't updated his LinkedIn in 3 years, and he was pretty sure he'd never connected with anyone from this office on social media. But before he could say anything, Natasha was already walking away. "Don't work too late," she called over her shoulder. "Important to maintain a healthy balance." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything that had happened. The sister comment, the security breach, the college professor. Each thing by itself could be explained away. Coincidence, lucky guess. Internet research, but all of them together? That was a pattern. The next morning, Daniel decided to do something he probably shouldn't have done. During his lunch break, he started searching for information about Natasha. He tried finding her online, looking for professional profiles, social media accounts, anything. What he found was confusing. There was a Natasha Volkov who worked as a consultant, with a professional website and recommendations. But when he dug deeper, the timeline didn't add up. The work history had gaps. The company references seemed legitimate but vague. He found another Natasha Volkov who specialized in corporate security. Different photo, different background, but something about the eyes looked similar. Could it be the same person? Then he found a third Natasha, this one in tech consulting, working for companies in 3 different countries over the past 5 years. The photos were always slightly different. Different hairstyles, different clothing, different angles. But that smile, that calculated, perfect smile was the same in every picture. Daniel's hands were shaking as he closed his browser. What was he looking at? Who was this woman? And more importantly, what was she doing at his company? He wanted to tell someone, but who would believe him? It sounded crazy. The new consultant might be using multiple identities. The new consultant seems to know too much. He could already imagine how that conversation would go, so Daniel did the only thing he could think of. He started keeping. The notes file on Daniel's laptop grew bigger every day. He felt like he was losing his mind, but the evidence kept piling up. Small things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture that made his stomach turn. Monday morning, Natasha mentioned that she'd heard good things about the Italian restaurant near Daniel's apartment. He'd never told anyone at work where he lived. Tuesday, she asked if his neighbor's dog was still barking at night. Wednesday, she casually dropped the name of Daniel's college roommate during a conversation about networking. Each time, she had an explanation ready. She must have overheard something. Someone else must have mentioned it. Pure coincidence. But Daniel wasn't buying it anymore. He started watching her interactions with other people. Natasha had this way of making people comfortable, getting them to share things they normally wouldn't. She'd tilt her head just right, smile at exactly the right moment, ask questions that seemed innocent, but opened doors to deeper information. Within a month, she knew more about the company than people who'd worked there for years. She knew about Tom's gambling problem. She knew about Jennifer's affair with someone from accounting. She knew which managers were unhappy with the CEO, which departments were underperforming, which projects were over budget. And she was always around when something important happened. Like the time the senior partner, Richard, had a private meeting with a potential client. It was supposed to be confidential, but Natasha somehow ended up in the same coffee shop that morning, sitting 2 tables away. She didn't approach them. She didn't even look their way. But Daniel saw her. He was across the street heading to that same coffee shop, and he saw Natasha sitting there with her laptop, wearing headphones, looking like any other person working remotely. Except the meeting fell through the next day. The client went with a competitor, and Richard looked furious. Daniel couldn't prove anything. But he had this feeling deep in his gut that Natasha had something to do with it. He decided to share his concerns with someone. His colleague Vincent had been at the company longer than anyone. If there was something off about Natasha, maybe Vincent had noticed too. They met for lunch at a restaurant far from the office. Daniel didn't want to risk being overheard. He laid out everything he'd observed, trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. Vincent listened, nodding occasionally, his expression serious. When Daniel finished, Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Daniel never expected. "You're right to be suspicious." Daniel felt relief and terror at the same time. "So you've noticed it too?" Vincent leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Daniel, I need you to trust me. What I'm about to tell you stays between us. Understood?" "Of course. Natasha isn't really a consultant." "Well, she is, but not the kind we think. She's investigating the company. Specifically, she's investigating Richard and the CFO, Leonard." Daniel's mind reeled. "Investigating them for what?" "That's where it gets complicated," Vincent said. "About 3 months ago, I noticed some irregularities in our financial reports. Money being moved around in ways that didn't make sense. Payments to companies I'd never heard of. When I started digging, I found connections to offshore accounts and shell corporations." "Shell corporations?" "Companies that exist on paper but don't actually do anything. They're used to hide money, to make transactions that you don't want traced." "Daniel, I think Richard and Leonard are involved in something illegal. Something big." The restaurant suddenly felt too warm. Daniel loosened his collar. "And Natasha knows about this?" "She's the one who approached me," Vincent admitted. 2 weeks before she officially started here. She showed me evidence, documentation I couldn't access. She said she worked for a private intelligence firm that's building a case. She needed someone on the inside to verify information. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's dangerous," Vincent said simply. "The less people who know, the safer everyone is. But you've noticed too much. You're smart, Daniel. Too smart for your own good sometimes. So I'm telling you now, stop digging. Stop watching her. Let Natasha do her job." Daniel felt betrayed. "You've been working with her this whole time? Helping her spy on our company?" "I'm helping expose criminals," Vincent corrected. "There's a difference. Daniel, you have no idea how deep this goes. The shipments we've been facilitating, the contracts we've processed, they're not for legitimate business. We're talking about weapons, equipment that ends up in conflict zones. People are dying because of what this company is doing." The words hit Daniel like physical blows. Weapons, conflict zones. This was insane. They worked for a consulting firm. They helped other companies with strategy and efficiency. They weren't arms dealers, but even as he thought it, pieces started clicking into place. The secretive meetings, The classified contracts, the international clients who never came to the office, the files that were kept in a separate secure system that only senior partners could access. I've been processing those financial documents, Daniel said, his voice hollow. I've been helping them do this? You didn't know, Vincent said. Most people don't. That's how these operations work. Compartmentalization. Everyone handles a small piece, and no one sees the full picture except the people at the top. Daniel put his head in his hands. His whole world was tilting. Everything he thought he knew about his job, his company, his career was built on a lie. What happens now? He asked. Now you go back to work and act normal, Vincent said. Don't change anything. Don't let Richard or Leonard know that you're aware of anything. Natasha is close to getting what she needs. Once she has enough evidence, the authorities will move in. The authorities? She's working with federal investigators, Vincent explained. This isn't just corporate espionage. This is a criminal investigation. When it comes out, it's going to be huge. The company will probably shut down. People will go to prison. Daniel felt sick. And what about us? What happens to everyone who works here? That depends, Vincent said. People who knowingly participated will face charges. People who were just doing their jobs will probably be fine. But Daniel, if you want to make sure you're on the right side of this, you need to cooperate. Natasha might ask for your help. If she does, I strongly suggest you give it. The rest of lunch passed in a blur. Daniel barely tasted his food. His mind was racing, trying to process everything, trying to figure out what to do. When they got back to the office, Natasha was standing by the elevators waiting. She looked at Daniel with that knowing smile. Can we talk? She asked. Privately? Vincent gave Daniel an encouraging nod and walked away. Daniel followed Natasha to an empty conference room. She closed the door and pulled down the blinds. Vincent told you, she said. It wasn't a question. He said you're investigating Richard and Leonard. That's part of it, Natasha confirmed. She sat down and gestured for Daniel to do the same. Daniel, I'm going to be direct with you because we don't have time for anything else. Yes, I'm here investigating your company. Yes, your CEO and CFO are involved in illegal weapons trafficking. And yes, I work for people who are building a case against them. People? A private intelligence agency contracted by federal investigators, she explained. We handle cases like this all the time. Going into companies, gathering evidence, building airtight cases before anyone realizes what's happening. And all that stuff you knew about me? My sister, my apartment, my college. Research, Natasha said simply. Background checks. I investigate everyone I work with. I needed to know if you could be trusted, if you were involved in the illegal activities, if you might be an asset or a liability. And what am I? You're clean, she said, which means you're also in danger. Because Richard and Leonard are getting nervous. They know something is wrong. They can feel it. And when people like that get scared, they start looking for loose ends to tie up. Daniel's mouth went dry. Are you saying they might come after me? I'm saying you need to be careful, Natasha replied. Don't do anything out of the ordinary. Don't ask questions. Don't let them know you're aware of anything. Can you do that? Daniel wanted to say yes. He wanted to be brave, to help bring down criminals. But fear was crawling up his spine. What if I just quit? What if I just leave and pretend I never knew any of this? Natasha's expression softened slightly. You could do that. But you'd always wonder if they were watching you, making sure you stayed quiet. And besides, I think you're better than that. I think you want to do the right thing. She stood up and moved toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. You have 24 hours to decide if you want to help us. If you do, come find me tomorrow. If you don't, I'll understand. But Daniel, either way, this company is going down. You just get to choose whether you're part of the solution or just another person running away. Then she was gone, leaving Daniel alone in the conference room with the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on his shoulders. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows move across the room as cars passed outside. Every sound made him jump. Every creak of the building settling made his heart race. 24 hours to decide. By morning, he'd made his choice. Not because he was brave, not because he was noble, but because Natasha was right. If he ran away now, he'd spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if they were coming for him. He found Natasha in the parking garage before work started. She was sitting in her car drinking coffee, looking at her phone. When Daniel knocked on the window, she didn't seem surprised. She just smiled and unlocked the passenger door. "I'll help," Daniel said, sliding into the seat. "Whatever you need." "Good," Natasha replied. She handed him a small device that looked like a USB drive. "This is a data logger. I need you to plug it into your computer during your shift today. It will copy specific files from the secure server. You won't be able to see what it's doing, and it won't leave any trace on your system." Daniel stared at the device. "If I get caught doing this, you won't get caught if you're careful," Natasha said. "Pick a time when you're alone. Plug it in, wait for the light to turn green, then remove it. The whole process takes about 90 seconds. "Can you do that?" Daniel's hands were shaking as he took the device. "What are these files?" "Proof," Natasha said simply. "Financial transactions, shipping manifests, communication records. Everything we need to show exactly what this company has been facilitating. But they're encrypted and stored in a system I can't access remotely. I need someone inside to physically retrieve them." "Why me? Why not Vincent?" "Because Vincent has already done his part. He's gathered intel from the legal department. You have access to financial systems that he doesn't. Different clearance levels, different data. We need both pieces to complete the picture." Daniel pocketed the device, feeling its weight like a stone. "And after this?" "After you have what you need. After this, you go home and wait. When the arrests happen, federal agents will want to interview everyone who works here. Be honest with them. Tell them everything you know. They'll see that you cooperated, that you helped. That matters. Then what about my career? After this comes out, who's going to hire someone from a company involved in weapons trafficking?" Natasha's expression softened. "That's a legitimate concern. But I think you'll find that doing the right thing even when it's hard opens doors you didn't expect. People respect integrity. You'll land on your feet." Daniel wanted to believe her. He got out of the car and walked toward the office building, the data logger burning a hole in his pocket. The morning dragged on. Daniel tried to focus on his work, but every minute felt like an hour. He kept glancing at the clock, waiting for the right moment. He needed to be alone. No one walking by. No one asking questions. Finally, around 11, people started heading to lunch. The office gradually emptied. Daniel waited until he couldn't hear any voices in the hallway, then pulled out the device with trembling hands. He was about to plug it in when a voice made him freeze. "Working hard?" Richard was standing in the doorway of Daniel's cubicle. The CEO, tall, expensive suit, perfect smile. But his eyes were cold. Daniel forced himself to breathe normally. "Just catching up on some reports. Mind if I sit?" Richard didn't wait for an answer. He pulled up a chair and sat down uncomfortably close. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he was sure Richard could hear it. The data logger was still in his hand, hidden under his desk. "Sure, what's up?" "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with our new consultant, Natasha." "She's been helpful," Daniel said carefully. "Good at what she does. Is she?" Richard leaned back, studying Daniel's face. "You know what I think? I think she's been asking a lot of questions, poking around in places she shouldn't be, and I think you've been helping her." The accusation hung in the air between them. Daniel's mind raced. Deny everything? Play dumb? He decided on partial honesty. "She's a consultant," Daniel said. "She's supposed to ask questions. That's literally her job." "There are questions and then there are investigations," Richard replied. "I've been running this company for 15 years. I know when someone is looking for dirt. And I know when my own employees are betraying me." Daniel felt sweat forming on his back. "I don't know what you're talking about." Richard stood up slowly. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly what Natasha has been asking you. You're going to tell me what information you've given her, and you're going to help me understand what she's really doing here." "I can't help you," Daniel said, "because I don't know anything." Richard's smile disappeared. "Wrong answer." He reached across the desk and grabbed Daniel's wrist, pulling it up. The data logger fell onto the desk between them. For a moment, both men just stared at it. Then Richard laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound. "You're even stupider than I thought. Did you really think you could spy on me? In my own company?" Daniel pulled his hand free and stood up, putting the desk between them. "I'm not spying. I'm gathering evidence of your crimes." "Crimes?" Richard's voice rose. "I built this company from nothing. I created jobs. I made people rich. And you want to destroy it all because of some misguided sense of morality? You're selling weapons," Daniel said. "People are dying because of what you do." "People die every day," Richard shot back. That's not my problem. My problem is employees who don't understand loyalty. My problem is consultants who stick their noses where they don't belong. And my problem is federal investigators who think they can touch me. The last part made Daniel's blood run cold. You know about the investigation? Of course I know, Richard said. I've known for months. Your precious Natasha isn't as clever as she thinks. I've been feeding her false information, leading her on a wild chase while I move my real assets somewhere safe. By the time anyone figures it out, I'll be untouchable. Daniel's confidence crumbled. If Richard knew about the investigation, if he'd been manipulating it all along, then everything they'd done was for nothing. Richard picked up the data logger and pocketed it. You're fired. Clean out your desk and get out. If you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut about everything you think you know. Because if you don't, he leaned in close. Well, accidents happen all the time. People get hurt. Sometimes they disappear. Think about your sister. Think about your family. Then think very carefully about what you say to anyone. He walked out, leaving Daniel standing there shaking with fear and rage. Daniel grabbed his phone and called Natasha. She answered on the first ring. Richard knows, Daniel said. He knows everything. He took the device. He said he's been feeding you false information. There was a pause. Then Natasha said something that surprised him. Good. Good? What do you mean good? Meet me at the address I'm about to text you, Natasha said. Don't go home. Don't talk to anyone. Just drive straight there. And Daniel? We're not done yet. Not even close, she hung up. A moment later, an address appeared on his screen. Daniel grabbed his coat and left, not bothering to clean out his desk. As he walked through the office, people stared. They'd probably heard him and Richard arguing. Let them stare. Let them wonder. He was done being scared. Now he was angry. And he was going to see this through to the end, whatever that looked like. The address Natasha sent was for a hotel 20 minutes away. Not a fancy one, just a standard business hotel off the highway. Daniel parked and found the room number she'd texted. He knocked 3 times and the door opened immediately. Natasha wasn't alone. There were 2 other people in the room. A man in his 40s wearing a dark suit, and a woman with short hair and a serious expression. The room was full of equipment. Laptops, phones, recording devices, and a wall covered with documents and photos connected by strings like something from a crime show. Daniel. This is Agent Park and Agent Chen, Natasha said, introducing the 2 strangers. FBI, Agent Park extended his hand. Thank you for coming. We've been monitoring your situation. Daniel shook his hand automatically, still processing everything. Richard said he knew about the investigation. He said he's been feeding Natasha false information. He thinks he has, Agent Chen said. That's what we wanted him to think. Natasha gestured for Daniel to sit down. Remember when I said people like Richard are dangerous when they're scared? Well, people like Richard are also predictable when they think they're winning. He believes he's outsmarted us. That overconfidence is going to be his downfall. Agent Park pulled up some photos on a laptop. Richard Mitchell has been under investigation for 3 years. The weapons trafficking is just part of it. Money laundering, fraud, bribery of foreign officials. He's built an entire network of illegal activities hidden inside a legitimate business. But he's careful. Very careful. Everything is layered, encrypted, moved through so many shell companies that it's almost impossible to trace. Almost, Natasha said, but not completely. Vincent has been helping us for 6 months, gathering documents from the legal side. You've been helping us understand the financial flows, and Richard's arrogance has been giving us everything else. Agent Chen opened a folder and showed Daniel some documents. The files you were going to download today? They were a test. We needed to see how Richard would react. Would he ignore it? Would he quietly fire you? Or would he do something that proves he knows exactly what those files contain and why they're dangerous to him? He threatened me, Daniel said. He threatened my family. We recorded that conversation, Natasha said. Your phone. We've had surveillance equipment running for weeks. Audio, video, everything. Richard just confessed to knowing about federal investigations, admitted to moving assets to avoid prosecution, and made direct threats against a witness. That's called consciousness of guilt, and it's powerful evidence in court. Daniel felt like he was in a dream. So this was all planned? Everything that happened today. Not everything, Agent Park admitted. We didn't plan for Richard to discover what you were doing that quickly. That was actually concerning. But the way he handled it, The things he said that gave us more than we could have hoped for. Natasha sat down next to Daniel. I know you're scared. I know you feel like you're in over your head. But you need to understand something. We're not playing games here. We have enough evidence to arrest Richard and Leonard right now. But if we move too soon, their lawyers will find holes in the case. They'll get out on bail, destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses. We need this to be airtight. So what happens now? Daniel asked. Now we wait, Agent Chen said. Richard is going to make moves. He's going to try to secure his position, protect his assets, possibly eliminate anything he sees as a threat. We'll be watching everything he does, every transaction, every communication, every meeting, and when he makes a mistake, we'll be ready. How long do we wait? Days, maybe a week, Agent Park said. Not long. Richard is nervous now. Nervous people make mistakes. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Come to the office tonight. 9 p.m., come alone. He showed the message to the agents. Natasha's eyes narrowed. That's from Leonard, the CFO. Is it safe? Daniel asked. No, Natasha said bluntly. But it might be necessary. If Leonard wants to talk, it means he's breaking ranks with Richard. That's significant, Agent Park considered it. We can wire you. Have agents nearby. But Daniel, you need to understand the risk. If things go wrong, if they realize you're cooperating with us, we might not be able to get to you in time. Daniel thought about his sister, his parents, his future, everything he'd worked for. Then he thought about the weapons, the people dying in conflict zones because of what this company facilitated. He thought about letting Richard and Leonard get away with it. I'll go, he said. The next few hours were spent preparing. They fitted Daniel with a wire so small he could barely feel it. They went over what to say, what not to say, how to handle different scenarios. They showed him photos of the agents who would be stationed nearby, so he'd know help was close even if he couldn't see them. As 9 o'clock approached, Daniel drove to the office. The building was mostly dark, just security lights in the lobby and a few windows lit on upper floors. He used his key card to get in. The security guard, Thomas, nodded at him. Working late? Thomas asked. Just finishing something up, Daniel replied, trying to sound normal. He took the elevator to the 4th floor where the executive offices were located. The hallways were empty, his footsteps echoing on the tile floor. Leonard's office door was open, light spilling into the hallway. Leonard was sitting at his desk, but he looked terrible. His tie was loose, his hair messy, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Close the door, Leonard said. Daniel closed it and sat down across from him. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally, Leonard opened a drawer and pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Drink? He offered. I'm okay. Leonard poured himself a generous amount and drank it in one gulp. Richard called me tonight. Told me you tried to steal company data. Told me you're working with that consultant woman and probably the FBI. Daniel didn't confirm or deny it. He just waited. I want you to know something, Leonard continued. When I started here, this was a legitimate business. We consulted for real companies, did real work, made honest money. I didn't know what Richard was doing. Not at first. When did you find out? About 4 years ago. I saw transactions that didn't make sense. I asked questions. Richard showed me what was really happening. And he gave me a choice. Either become part of it and get rich or refuse and have an accident. Leonard poured another drink. I chose money. I chose safety. I told myself it wasn't my fault what other people did with the products we shipped. I was just moving numbers around on paper, right? But I knew. I've always known. Why are you telling me this? Daniel asked. Because I'm done, Leonard said. I'm done being scared. I'm done being Richard's puppet. I'm done lying to myself about what we've been doing. So